bionic dragons that fire rockets from its back, demigods from the night that can coat the land in a permafrost. These are just some of the magnificent creatures in Palworld, the game that has taken the internet by storm. The Palagos Islands will be my home for the next 100 days, and watch as I go from a complete noob to an absolute Palworld legend. If this sounds like the video for you, then join me to the end. Before any hero's journey can begin, they must be forged in the fires of destiny. Did I craft a character that was unique to my preferences? Did I create a character that was so unique that he would carve out his own story in these new unexplored lands? No! I created a generic anime girl. Welcome to Palworld. I gave her heart-shaped eyes because I have a brain parasite that compelled me to do so. And because I'm a mature adult, I played around with the voice slider before settling on my character. I woke on a beach surrounded by little critters called pals. Are they Pokemon? No! I encountered this lady who hates pals because they ate her friends alive or something? She did give me wood, however, in-game. With that handful of wood, I crafted myself some basic tools, such as a club and a pickaxe. And I began harvesting the resources in the area. With those resources, I crafted my first pal balls. I understand why the woman on the hill was so afraid. If I saw this thing coming at me with a wild look in its eye, I'd fear for my life too. I used my cudgel to give this precarious poultry a bonk and used a pal ball to capture it. After capturing that chicky pie, I'm just gonna call it a chicky pie, I had an idea.
Can I capture a human?
I had to know. So I returned to the angry woman on the hill and bonked her over the head. So in response, she filled me full of lead. When I went to get my stuff back, I threw down my freshly caught chicky pie by accident. I thought it was kind of funny. I give this woman one last scare before I rolled off into the sunset. It was time to settle down on somewhere more permanent. And I picked this place between my initial spawn point because it had a fast travel node next to it, and I would be using it quite liberally later on. I crafted a PAL box, and what this is, it's basically like a PC terminal in Pokemon. Look, I swear I'm trying not to make too many Pokemon comparisons, okay? Work with me. What this did is it allowed me to make my home more permanent and allowed me to control my pals around the base. And it also acted as a pal storage. As I was building my base, I saw this mighty Memorist, and I knew I had to tame it. But for now, I was still too weak. As night fell on day one, I finished up building my starter home when I noticed this dude just walking around. I honestly thought he was a player at first, so I had to investigate. Yeah, turns out this man here is a wandering merchant. My stomach began to rumble and I was hungry. I placed down a campfire next to my house, and with the eggs I collected from my chicky pies, I made some breakfast. I also made some grilled chicky pie. Don't worry, they aren't for mine. While taming some yesterday, I had a few accidents. Nothing to worry about. After eating a filling meal, I began to build a ranch for my chicky pies. Of course, I didn't want my pals to starve, so I also placed down a feeding station and a berry crop plot. I can see why Palworld is so successful now. It takes a person's primal desire to cultivate and makes it a reality. As I was watering my berries, this dinosaur wanted to watch. I'd end up catching him later, but for now, I was freezing. I needed to keep warm with these torches. Before the sun rose on day 3, I saw these mysterious floating pals, and I thought they looked really cool. And since they looked cool, I wanted one. This pal was called Daydream. I found one I liked and began hitting it to make it more compliant. There will be no justice system jokes here. When its health was low enough, I threw a pal ball. I caught the Daydream and did a little happy dance. With my new pal, I approached the sleeping dinosaur and I hit it over the head. With one attack, he crippled both me and my Daydream, so I began running for my life. The dinosaur chased me to the second half of the island, and it eventually lost interest. Now that I was off the hook, I was free to explore at my leisure. I found a treasure chest and another fast travel waypoint. I also found some lore that I didn't read, because reading's hard. I found this dude just chilling by a campfire. When I talked to him, he says that pals make you good. So, cool I guess. The more pals you have, the stronger you become. After talking to the skilled islander, I found a fire egg, and I couldn't hatch it at this very moment. I'd need to craft an egg incubator first. I saw in a promotional video that you can ride these things, and hey, walking wasn't really that much fun. So, I figured I'd try my luck. I hit it with my club and began fighting with it, and that didn't go very well at all. After getting my stuff back, the Ekdir that I was trying to tame ran away. But, with luck, I did manage to find a herd of them. Once again, with club in hand, I tried my luck. It was at this point that I discovered that you can dodge roll. My elite Dark Souls skills did not save me, and I died again. When I respawned at base, I tended to my berry farm, when all of a sudden, an alarm went off. I was being raided by hungry pals. I had no idea what any of that meant, so I steeled myself for battle. A group of hooded hoodlum lizards called least punks started to run up the hill to my base, hoping for a free meal. I was feeling quite charitable, so I fed them some knuckle sandwiches. I don't know why I didn't tame it at the time. I was probably filled with adrenaline. My chicky pies fought off the other least punk. Before I knew it, the raid was over, and I could leave to collect my dropped gear. I returned home to capture some lamb balls for the tutorial quest. It wanted me to get 5 of them, and I got to work. I discovered that if you're too close to a pal, your pal ball will go right through it, which is quite unfortunate. I had some wool laying around from the lamb balls, and I fashioned it into cloth so I could make my first set of clothes. Looking cute as a button, as usual. Well done, Glahm. There were some lamb balls across the bridge to my base, and for some reason I hesitated on capturing this one, and my chicky pies finished it off for me. Thanks, I guess. And I placed down a shoddy bed. I've slept behind dumpsters before, and under debris on cardboard. Nothing about this bed looked shoddy. I would sleep on this bed. Now that I had my own bed, my pals needed some beds of their own, and I got to crafting a few. With the tutorial tasks completed for now, I upgraded my pal box, and I could summon more pals from the inventory to help me around the base. After that, I planted more berries, and this chicky pie decided to show me its cool dancing moves. Nice. And while waiting for my lamb balls to shed their wool, I made a tasty lunch for myself. Before long, I had enough wool to convert into cloth to craft myself a parachute. When night fell, I left my base to tame some nocturnal pals, like these hoot crites. I liked them because they were wizard owls, and hey, you know, that's good enough for me. I found a group of them, and I said hello by smacking one over the head with the bat, like a normal person, and we got into a huge fight. The hoot crites managed to knock out my daydream, but I captured one in return, so it kinda balanced itself out. While fleeing from the remaining hoot crites, I found a Depresso, and I liked them a lot, so I captured this one as well. When I got back to base, I put Depresso to work, and he was really efficient. He even started to gather resources around the base, and began placing them in a storage chest for me. Depresso was a bro. A real pal, if you will. If you place a down pal in the pal box, they will heal in about 9 minutes or so. And since I had time to kill, and pal balls to burn, I went out on a pal taming spree. I started off with this cute little fox Sparks, a fire fox, white on the nose, and I'd chase these Cativa around with an axe. With the help of my hoot crites, I engaged this Ecthier, and with the skills I've learned after playing Palworld for a few hours, became a master of the dodge roll. We got the Ecthier, and that was one of my biggest wins. On my way back to base, I saw Nightwing flying lazily above, and I wanted to catch it, but I couldn't quite yet. My travels led me to this small rundown settlement, and I had a small chat with a down-on-his-luck PDIF officer, saying he'll do anything for a buck, and I mean anything. Speaking of doing anything for a buck, I've opened up channel memberships. If you like me and the content that I do, consider becoming a channel member today, with cool perks like private art streams when they happen, early access to upcoming videos, and a viewer poll where you guys can vote on the games you'd like to see me play. And even Discord access when I finally get off my butt and make one. Every dollar spent keeps the lights on and the funny flowing. Consider becoming a channel member today. Alright, shameless plug over. When I got back to base, I found out that you can make a string of the same type of structures, so I placed down a few storage chests, and my Ultra Pal, Depresso, started crafting them for me. Honestly, I don't want to tell the other pals, but Depresso is my favorite. I let my Fox Sparks out of the pal box to stretch its legs, and much to my amusement, it helps you cook food. The more I play this game, the more I realize how in-depth a lot of these game mechanics are. You'll see for yourself later on in the video too. A herd of what eating pals? Well, it's a good thing I'm a small anime girl. Alright team, defend me with your lives. I know I'm the one that enslaved you to do my bidding against your will, but defend me. Defend me and my honor. Defend me they did, because that raid was over before I even knew it. I'll admit though, not a whole lot happened today. I was stuck at the PAL upgrade bench making my Daydream a collar. This collar would allow her to synchronize attacks with me in combat. After the collar was crafted, I began constructing a forge to smelt ore into ingots. Slowly, I was clawing my way out of the Stone Age. One of the coolest things in Palworld is that your forges run off of fire pals. Fire pals have the kindling ability, and they go around your base lighting torches, cook food for you, and smelt your ore and ingots. Stuff like that just tickles me pink. I started day 7 by crafting myself a feathered hairband. It said it was armor, and it protected your head from damage slightly, just like a napkin protects the inside of your house from tornado projectiles. I had enough metal ingots to craft a saddle for my deer, and Depresso gave me a hand, and then he just left me hanging seconds later. Thanks, man. This one task alone took up a good chunk of the day. But I got the saddle crafted. I was now free to explore the island at a decent pace, and run over small pals because it's funny to watch them roll around. More resource gathering was in my future. My pal box wanted a stone pit to be built before I could upgrade my base again, and I am one to deliver what the almighty pal box commands. With the help of my pals, we assembled a rock quarry, and like a duck to water, Depresso resigned to his fate and began mining. While I was on the ball, I made a lot of arrows. I would use them for an up-and-coming boss fight a little later, and I needed them to lure the Nightwing out of the sky. I noticed my Depresso was feeling quite depressed, so to help remedy the situation, I tried to get him to sleep. Hey, when you're depressed, sleeping for 16 hours a day helps immensely. Trust me, I know from experience. Depresso was quite keen on not taking a nap. I did what I could. The daylight was burning, and I wanted to go tame a Nightwing. I mounted it up on deer, and ran with expedience to where I saw the Nightwing days prior. I saw the Nightwing, and I readied my bow, and let loose a volley of arrows. The Nightwing was quite formidable, and did a lot of damage to me. My dodges were near perfect, and the symphony of arrows sang throughout the hills. I tried my luck, and threw a pal ball at the Nightwing, unbeknownst to me at the time, but I just threw my last pal ball. I had no other choice but to disengage. Up on the hill, I found a pal ball, and as soon as I picked it up, the Nightwing shot me down again. After collecting my stuff, there was another free pal ball on the ground, and a fast travel. I collected them both, and then I was back at it. I was in Gosu mode, and wasn't leaving this valley without that Nightwing. We went back and forth, until success! My first Palworld flyer was obtained. My armor was damaged, but my spirits were high. I decided to run back home on foot to see what I could find. I managed to find a couple more Depressos. I caught one, and deer went down. With my travel slowed, I ran to the nearest fast travel beacon and went back to the safety of my base, triumphant. While I was checking out stuff around the base, I saw this shiny Daydream floating around my house. I was actually panicking behind the screen a little bit. I really didn't want to screw this up. I ran inside to craft more pal balls, and when I mentally prepared myself, engaged the shiny Daydream. The range on my pals at base were insane, because they started to attack the Daydream too. With just a tiny sliver of health left, I clutched out a W and captured her. She was very close to dying. I was shaking. The excitement of my first shiny pal was probably the most rewarding thing that happened to me that day, at least. I ran over to the pal box to swap Daydreams. Sorry babe, this one's just shinier. I couldn't really tell the difference between a normal pal and a shiny, but this Daydream looked slightly bigger, so that's cool. With my shiny new pal, I was feeling confident and decided to take on this Dinosaur that was patrolling the base. I shot at it with an arrow, then it proceeded, without skipping a beat, to one-shot my Daydream. My other pals didn't quite like that, and they all jumped the Dinosaur, leading to an easy capture. I was going a bit stir-crazy, and decided to leave the base for a while and explore, as well as farm pals for resources. I unlocked another fast travel, and saw this fellow floating along. Me being a naive Palworld player, I thought this guy was a mini-boss or something, not realizing that he was just a regular old pal. I threw 2 pal balls in vain, and as I got closer to him, he shot a poison bolt at my deer, and deleted himself. Big rip. As morning rose, I found another fast travel, and decided to head back home. I wanted to fight my first world boss today, so I organized my pals and set out for adventure. Using the fast travel near my base, I traveled to a crumbled castle and caught a T-font, climbed a literal mountain, and met my foe face to face, a Chillette. A ferret dragon thing that shoots ice. My deer charged at it and got stuck on the cliff, causing the Chillette to break for a moment. But it was crafty and used the bug to get me to come closer. Clever. Before I could pull out a pal ball, it got nuked and I lost my chance. On my way home, I tried to glide over to the mainland and didn't quite make it. I also found out that you can drown if you run out of energy. I did get my stuff back and ran across a pack of dire howls. They looked cool, so that means I had to tame one, right? Well, that's what I would have done if my pals didn't microwave them in seconds flat. I did manage to catch one, but it broke out at 60% capture rate. I don't know how that happens. but it did. After heading home, I placed down the hot springs, and I called it a day. For the last week, I've had trouble getting my pals to help me around the base, and I think I found out the reason why. The pals were having trouble getting through the door to my house, and they couldn't access the crafting station. So with that in mind, I crafted a high-quality crafting station outside. This structure would allow me to craft advanced armor and tools, like metal axes, picks, and armor, which I upgraded. The pelt armor looked really good, I think. I was very concerned with my Depresso's health, so I tried throwing him into the hot springs to relax, and he just kind of floated in air. I don't know why he did this. I know I was lacking beds, but I've never seen a Depresso sleep, so I have no idea what's wrong with him. I just kind of left him alone. When the sun was going down, I left base to catch more nocturnal pals. And do you remember that skilled Islander from the other day? Turns out you can kill him for coins. I do this a few times in the playthrough. I don't know why I did this. I probably have some unresolved issues. I ran up on the Chillette again, and this time I had the intent to catch it. With the help of Ekdir and Daydream, we got it really low, and I managed to clutch out a catch. When I was leaving to go back home, another Tombat spawned, and I managed to catch that as well. Hey, it was a pretty solid day today. The morning of day 12, I caught another Tombat. I was lucky to find it before it despawned, and it almost got me, but I was too quick for it. It did break out of the Palworld a few times. Back at base, I crafted a medieval medicine bench, and I would never use this in the playthrough. I don't know why, but I didn't mess with it too much. I needed to craft my Nightwing a saddle, and I was low on Paldium fragments, so I got to work getting some from around the base. I quickly became over-encumbered, but luckily, I was still close to base, so the walk back wasn't too horrendous. It gave me a moment to think about my life. And my regrets. Gosh darn it, wouldn't you know, I was low on metal ingots. This would become a problem through this entire 50 days. I would always be behind on my metal production. I've never once looked at a guide or a YouTube video. This is my first time playing Palworld, and I wanted to see what I could accomplish on my own just by playing the game. You know, like the good old days. You may also notice that these days are getting shorter. You are correct. I spend a lot of time farming and mining metals and chopping wood. To me that's boring to watch, so I'm not going to focus on it too much. Yeah, I'm gonna be one of those I farmed off camera guys, but you guys are just gonna have to take my word for it. We're working on the honor system here on Channel Glahm. I started working on my Nightwing saddle today. It took up most of the day. My days in Palworld are roughly 22 or so minutes, and without the help of pals, this project took a very long time to finish. Nevertheless, with the Nightwing saddle finished, I took to the skies on my maiden flight, and it was exciting to leave the land dwellers behind. I admit, I got a little too big for my britches and tried to take out this 38 Mamarest boss. It nearly one-shot my Chillette, and I began to run for the safety of the travel beacon. Luckily for me though, it lost interest and went back to its normal patrol. When I got back to the safety of my base, I began preparing for the boss fight at Rain Syndicate Tower. As I was crafting a fresh set of Pal Balls, the Syndicate itself decided to raid my base. My Dinosaur took it really personal, and flattened their entire raiding party in one shot. Dinosaur didn't take attitude from no one. Dinosaur scared me. Today was a very big day. I was leaving home to fight my first boss battle at a tower. I was kind of nervous because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And if I messed this up, I'd look stupid in front of thousands of strangers on the internet, and nobody wants to look stupid in front of strangers. We arrived at the Rain Syndicate Tower and teleported inside. Our first fight was Zoe and her massive pal called Grisbolt. I was kind of jealous of Grisbolt. In a way, I too wanted to have a spunky anime girl sit on my back, but alas, we covet most in life what we cannot have. Grisbolt was like a dad after a few glasses of funny juice. If you got too close, he'd hit you really hard. I let Dinosaur sort out the majority of it. During the fight, I discovered that if you cycle through pals, they will heal in their pal ball until you use them again. I would use this to my advantage and cycle between my heavy hitters like Dinosaur and Ekdir. After a few minutes, Zoe and Grisbolt went down, and I had my first major boss completion. I was feeling quite ecstatic. Dinosaur even teabagged Zoe. What a savage. After the fight, I was transported to the top of the tower, unlocked a fast travel, and noticed the settlement down below. I parachuted in for a closer look, and engaged the Syndicate goons below. In a cage, there was an imprisoned pal that I set free, and in return, it joined my party. This fellow was called Arsox. When I returned home, I felt invigorated, and tried to take out this Mamarest, and face the consequences of my actions. After I got my stuff back, I went AFK to use the restroom. I wanted to see what would happen when I was away, and apparently it wasn't much. When I took a look at the skill tree, I noticed that I could use points in an ancient technology tree and unlocked a feed bag. And a grappling gun. The feed bag would automatically feed your party pals for you. The next day, while I was looking over my pals, the Syndicate decided to launch another raid on my base, and were quickly dealt with by angry, probably overworked pals. After the beatdown, I began crafting my Chiletta saddle with the help of Daydream. With her help, the project took half the time the Nightwing saddle did. And after a job well done, I began crafting a pal egg incubator and plopped that fire egg that I found a few days ago into it. I had a few minutes to burn, so I ran into the world again, mounted atop Chillette. I wanted to fight a dungeon pal to see if I could catch it. This one was called Pen King. As soon as I set foot in the dungeon, I was gunned down, before I could even react. So began the run of shame back to the dungeon to collect my things. This took a while, but with the snap of a finger, here we are. Back at it for round 2. I'm gonna be real with you all. I don't know why I was using an ice pal to fight another ice pal. I realized my mistake as I'm editing this video, especially when I had Arsox in my pal party. I think it's a good time to mention that I played this game for 24 hours straight to make this video. I did not sleep hardly a wink, and I didn't eat or drink. Please leave a like, it goes a long way. But I got what I deserved. Instead of doing the smart thing and leveling my freshly found Arsox, I decided to do the roundabout solution and craft myself a fire bow and some fire arrows. When I finished with those tasks, I checked up on the fire egg in the incubator, and when it hatched, it turned into another Arsox. So now I have 2 decent fire pals that I would never use, because I'm an idiot. Day 16, and I was ready to face the day. I wanted to fight Pen King once again, so here we go. I died. I tried again, and used Arsox this time. I remembered that I had him. And he got crumpled in seconds. I fought my little heart out, but I got crumpled too. While all of that was going on, I had an ice egg incubating back at base, and it turned out to be another Chillette. After collecting my stuff from the dungeon entrance, I decided I'd go out and explore the world a bit more. I used my Nightwing and flew across the water to another island and collected a large electric egg. In the distance, I saw the sparkles of another shiny pal. This one was called Robin Quill. I thought I'd try my luck, and it one-shot my Nightwing, and I was next. It despawned. I never saw it again. I didn't have a fast travel to the new island, so I had to get my stuff back the good old-fashioned way. Chillette and I fought, rock climbed, ran through the fields of pals, and snuck around an all-out war between humans and pals. I got my stuff back, and without skipping a beat, I unlocked the fast travel just in case this time. Back at base, I threw the egg into the incubator and made the decision to upgrade my base. I was tired of living in this shack, and I started tearing down my old house and placed new stone foundations down. I was still in the process of upgrading my base when I was hit with yet another Syndicate raid. These guys really hated me. After that little interruption, I boxed up my pals to let them heal from work-related injuries, and I continued to build. I personally liked the aesthetics of stone and wood, and had a combo of both for my base. Unfortunately, there were gaps between the walls and the door, so my quick fix solution was just to place sandbags to block intruders. I tried to make my pals' living quarters as comfortable as I could, given my limited resources. I let some pals out of the box to help with the workload, and by the time this was finished, it was day 18. To keep my pals nice and fed, I placed down a few buried crop plots, and a wheat plot to keep myself fed. Right away, my pals got to work cultivating the land by planting seeds and watering crops. Oh, I also hatched this beacon. He looked really cool. I guess I spent the first bit of day 19 AFK, I don't know why. I think I was eating a sandwich or something. When I stepped out of the base, I noticed a shiny land ball out of the corner of my eye, and I had to have it. I mounted up on Ektir and took care of its entourage. I caught it at the last moment before my pals could kill it. Oh, was cutting it kinda close with that one, huh? I was running low on pal resources, so I went into the world and began terrorizing the locals a little bit. And I caught a few for good measure as well. I can always use a larger workforce. The economy runs on those who are underpaid and overworked. I didn't get settled in for too long because I was raided yet again, this time by the Palworld mascot, Relaxosaurus. I thought these guys were really rare at the time, and I took this raid as an opportunity to catch one. Good thing too, because the other Relaxosauruses got wrecked. After a successful day, I placed down some fresh crafting stations to build tomorrow. I continued to build up my base into day 20, and I actually threw my pal out into the world. This happens fairly often, and if you decide to play Palworld for yourself after watching this video, you know exactly what I mean. I finally had enough metal to upgrade my basic tools. Hey, it only took 20 days, but it felt good to get rid of these archaic relics. I once again challenged that Mammorest that was wandering near my base, and I would come to regret that decision very quickly and decisively. I thought I had a pretty stacked army of pals, and that they would smoke anything that was deemed a threat. I watched from the safety of the bridge as the Mammorest ran through my entire workforce. I was throwing everything in the kitchen sink at this Mammorest. It was way too formidable. When I tried to switch out more pals, its tornado attack got me. I threw more pals at it, and it seemed like we were making some good progress. I was down to my last set of pals. After making short work of my team, another tornado attack sent me packing. After 2 defeats, and my base in shambles, and over 40 incapacitated pals, I conceded defeat. I surveyed the damage and began repairs. I was able to finally craft myself a shield, and if you're familiar with Halo at all, think of it as an overshield that absorbs incoming damage and restores itself over time. My shiny Lamball ran over to help me craft it, and, yeah. You know what? I don't have anything funny to say. As I was crafting, some man-eating pals came to say hello. They didn't get very far. I did manage to capture Elise Punk at the last second. This warning message wouldn't go away, so I started looking around my base for more pals that might be in the area. And I noticed a dire howl glitching out by a tree. Well, I wasn't one to turn down a free dire howl, so I caught it easily. One of the coolest pal designs, hands down. I saw in the tech tree that you can craft a dire howl saddle and ride it around, and I got to work farming leather right away. She ran really fast, and with her help, I farmed up some metal nodes, and then I called it a day. I set up my forges for smelting for when my pals woke up, and crafted up a sphere workbench, and it would allow me to craft higher quality pal balls. Wait, these things are called sphere? Pal spheres? Have I been saying it wrong this entire time? No one told me. Well, we can't dwell on mistakes of the past. Making an upgrade cooking station was the next thing on my list. I was going a bit crazy just sitting at base all the time, and I wanted to go out and explore. I teleported through the fast travel beacon to that new island I discovered a few days ago, and immediately was beset upon by really aggro pals called Gale Claw. They knocked out my dire howl. I summoned my Relaxosaurus to help fight, but I got unfortunately. As I was running to get my stuff back, I was being shot at, and I dodge rolled for my literal life. I got my stuff back and made a daring escape over the side of this cliff, where I found a Floki in distress. I took out the assailant and captured it. Yeah, I'm sure it wouldn't mind. Later on, I was exploring a bit more and went to collect a crate that I found on the ground, when all of a sudden, I was attacked by a robin quill. We got into a scrape, and it almost took out my Nightwing, but we prevailed, and added it to our growing collection. Much to my amusement, the Relaxosaurus just pukes up water, and it looks like it's in a lot of pain. With my base chores secured, I decided to do a little ore farming for the rest of the day. Was back at it again on day 24, out into the world and catching more pals, like the Smelpaka. I noticed these giant bones and decided to have a closer look. After flying around for a bit, I found a cave and wanted to go in. At the time, I didn't realize that it was a dungeon. You might remember, I asked a question on day 1. Can I capture a human? Turns out, yes you can. You can capture a whole dude. The game tells you that's inhumane, but I consider it a rehabilitation program. After wandering around for a bit, I found the end boss, and well, first time didn't go so well. With the power of editing, here we are, back at the end boss again. This time, it was a Jolthog. When I got it low enough, I captured it. Checked the end dungeon chests. I got a defense pendant, which would be helpful, and a ruby. I have no idea what this is for. And the skill point book, pretty decent for 5 minutes of work. When we left the cave, I also captured a Celeray. I was able to craft a musket finally. I just needed to clear this dungeon first. After fighting my way through swaths of goons, I found some sulfur and mined it. This would be important for gunpowder. Before long, we were at this cave's end boss, a large rush roar. The smaller rush roars surrounding it didn't do much, and we caught the big one super easy. Den loot wasn't anything to write home to mom about. I got a seed ability, and I have no idea what this does, and I never used it. If you guys know what these are for, please let me know in the comments. After leaving the cave, I ran along the river and stumbled upon this porcine old man. He gave me a spiel that he was a cop, and he ended up in Palworld after a work-related accident. After saying goodbye, he gave me, a small, impressionable girl, a slice of pizza, and I was on my merry way. Further into the new island, I flew into a syndicate camp and freed a Flambelle while they were distracted with some hoot crites. And then I headed to the fast travel beacon. I had full intentions on going home, but I got distracted by a pair of loop moon. The one I tried to capture kept breaking out of its palasphere. The game recommended that I use a better palasphere, but you know what? Anything can be solved with brute force. I swear I was trying to leave when I got distracted by this cognito, and I had to capture it because they looked like funny little critters. You knocked out my Nightwing, and I was over encumbered from random stuff that was on the ground. I was too nervous to drop anything out of my inventory, and I cut it really close. As the sun rose into day 26, I did capture the cognito. Right on the start of day 26, I found some cow-looking pals called Mazzarina. They looked silly, so I decided I would try and catch one, or both if I could. They were pretty docile, and the first one I captured didn't seem too pleased about the current situation it found itself in. After capturing the Mazarina, I found this huge Brachiosaurus looking pal, and of course I was compelled to tame it. Why? Because it looked cool. With the help of my dire howl, we got this gentle giant to cooperate, and it became mine. It did take a few tries though. The second Mazarina from earlier decided to come back for round 2, and it happily joined the team against its will. I noticed some sea serpent looking pals in the water below, and they were called Surfent, and yep, they looked cool, had to have one. It didn't quite go to plan, they escaped all the pal spheres, and they became really angry. I just said screw it and ran the opposite direction, and released my Dinosaur to mop up the mess. A large electric egg that I was incubating hatched into Univolt, and we get a better look at him later. I started crafting my Univolta saddle, and my touchy Lamball gave me a hand. Between us, Syndicate guy was giving me the creeps. He helps around the base, sure, but it's just so jarring to see a dude decked out in a Gopnik tracksuit amongst some cutesy anime-style pals. I checked up on my hard-working Tombats and gave them some lovings, and it seems like they really appreciated the attention. With their hard work, I was able to craft Megaspheres, and these would allow me to capture more powerful pals. Oh, I also tamed this duck thing at some point. I don't remember doing it, but hey, it's here. The name skirts the YouTube content policy, so I won't be saying it out loud. It was boss day. I wanted to fight some bosses and tame them. First, I started with a cat witch called Catress, the phantasmal feline. I just ran around and let Dinosaur fight her. Dinosaur's seed mine attack does a stupid amount of damage. Holy moly. He eventually went down. I was really tired, and I wasn't firing on all pistons for this fight, so it was quite sloppy. I let out Flambelle, and as luck would have it, Catress got stuck on a broken pillar. I was very stupid and got too close, causing her pathing to reset, and she almost one-shot me. I let out Nightwing, and he fared a lot better. Catress was gunning for me, and all I could do was run around the arena screaming, while Nightwing chipped away at her health. Before I could capture her, Nightwing wombo comboed her, and that was that. I was mildly upset. Luckily for me, I could repeat this fight after a very reasonable cooldown timer. I went home and crafted a 3-shot bow, and a healthy amount of arrows. 600 should be enough. Then I swapped out my party pals and headed out again, this time to fight a boss called Bushi. Bushi was a pal that reminded me of Yojimbo from Final Fantasy, and I really liked him. Thus, I wanted to capture him. The fight wasn't too difficult. Bushi telegraphed his attacks, so it was kind of easy to read, but if you weren't paying attention, he'd slice you a couple times. I tried to capture him twice, and then died. Unfortunately for me, my Flambelle dealt the killing blow on him, and he died. I didn't get any loot for that fight either, and he's on a 1-hour cooldown. RIP. Whole lot of nothing going on today. I just farmed ore, watched my pals work, crafted myself a lantern that makes it so you don't need a torch in dark areas, and upgraded my helmet to metal. And then I was back at it again, mining ore into the night. Pen King, we meet again. Ready yourself for combat. For this day, you shall meet your doom. I died. Aha, Pen King, you thought you could best me that easily? Well, you got another thing coming, pal. I tried to use Nightwing to lower Pen King just enough so I could catch him, and Nightwing went down. It was time for my new Univolt to show me what he can really do. Turns out he can do a lot because Pen King went right from the safe zone into the danger zone, and passed out before I could catch him. I resigned to my fate and just left the whole Pen King mess behind me. Univolt and I were running around exploring this beautiful autumn grove when we found a clearing, and it was the home to an Elfidran. Elfidran? This dragon. I loved everything about this dragon and wanted to make it mine. So my team of pals and I got to work fighting this mighty beast. Elfidran was no pushover, and she ran through my pals like a D1 linebacker. Left with little choice, I tried to flee with my dignity intact. She was enraged and chased me back down the hill, and I made my final stand on this bridge. If I was going down, I was going down a hero. I'm not sure what Elfidran used to defeat me right here, but I just got folded, out of nowhere. My travel pals were down for the count, and I ran home after collecting my stuff, defeated. I didn't have time to rest. Right on the dawn of day 31, I was being raided by Toko birds. I figured I'd be proactive and stop them before they got to my base. They didn't get very far, and I managed to catch 2 of them. Yeah, I'm cooking again. I was just using this opportunity to show off how cute my character was, nothing more. I started crafting a weapons workbench, Finally, so I can create better weapons. I saw the upgrade for the Toko. You can hold them and shoot eggs from them like a grenade launcher. I was all over that. I needed it. I got the gloves crafted and took my Toko out for a test run, and let these pals have it. With a spank, eggs began to fly like the 4th of July. The only drawback was a very short window to use the ability and a super long cooldown to use it again. So you gotta make it count. I crafted another ranch for my pals as well today. Univolt and I ran back to where the ephedrine was waiting, and we started round 2 with this fairy dragon. I dove in and got to work. With Toko's help, we began to bombard the ephedrine. Unfortunately, while quite the spectacle, it didn't hardly do any damage. I did try to juggle her though. I wanted to see if I could keep her in the air with explosive eggs. I whipped out the tried and true Dinossum. He chonked her health to great effect. Then, it was Nightwing's turn. Then once again, I used Univolt. Before she met her end, I tossed out a Hail Mary Gigasphere with a 19% capture chance. This was it. Success. I wasted no time crafting Ephedra in her saddle. And with her help, I took on the Mammorest that has been haunting my base for the last 32 days. I did die and fell through the map. I was freaking out because I thought that I lost all of my stuff. Good and bad news. The good news is, my stuff is still on land. The bad, the angry Mammorest was guarding it. I didn't dare die again because I thought my bag would despawn. I kited desperately, jumping off of this small hill and climbing back up when it was safe. I chanced it and rolled in to collect my stuff. I threw out Toko and discovered that he blows himself up. I was quite flabbergasted and took a hit. I fought this Mammorest into the night. With a Gigasphere, we caught the Mammorest. It was a darn good day. Good job, team. I've made some better pal beds and erected, please don't laugh, a silo. This helped my farming pals with better production, equaling more food per hour. Then I crafted some bullets for me musket. And that's about all that happened today. What are the bullets without a musket to use them? I began crafting one with haste. You know I got that thang on me. It was round 2 with Catress. With my musket and the help of my Dire Howl, we began whittling her health down. Eventually my Dire Howl did bite it. I wasn't playing any more games and whipped out the Mammorest. The Mammorest did take the extra damage from Catress's flame attacks, but its tornadoes did a ton of damage. With that, I did capture her very smoothly this time. Caught Pen King lacking, dude was sleeping, and I gave him what for. And with my musket, I almost one-shot him. Holy mackerel. Pen King also somehow escaped a 97% Gigaball. Like, what? Didn't escape this time, though. Next up was Bushi. I let him know I was here with a love tap to the back of the dome. Reloading the musket during the fight was a pain, so I just let the Mammorest at him. After a few back and forths, Bushi was now mine. While I was exploring the bamboo groves on day 35, I looked up and saw this neat bird-looking guy, and I wanted to tame it. I lost sight of the one that I was tracking, but I did find a small group of them, and I thought about engaging all 3 for a moment. But sanity prevailed, and I lowered my musket. The one I was initially tracking must have landed for a rest, because as soon as I turned around, it attacked me. I lined up my shot, and almost took it out with one hit. I panic-tossed a Palsphere, but it escaped. The second time, I managed to catch it, and all of the Vanworms in the area aggroed on me. It was time to use the big guns. Elphedrine mopped up the rest, and we headed back home. I wanted to craft the Vanworm a saddle, but I was lacking on flame organs. So back into the world I went. I killed the Islander, just because, and started terrorizing the Fire Pals. After farming the organs I needed... you know what? That sounds weird when I say it out loud. Oh well. When we got back home, the Free Pal Alliance decided to pop in for a visit, and my pals proceeded to pop them all over the grass. In hindsight, I should have caught one. Imagine the sitcom-style comedy of the Syndicate guy and a Free Pal Alliance guy, like 2 roommates who are always at ends, but they're both jocular and well-meaning. Don't steal that idea. It's a good idea. I wanted to fight another boss today, and fresh into the morning on day 36 I upgraded my Elphedrine. And I wanted to upgrade my Vanworm, mostly his stamina so he could stay in the air for longer, but that isn't a thing, I guess. Oh well. I reached my destination and climbed on a small rock wall, plucked a Palsphere from the void, and entered the cave. This place was crawling with Syndicate thugs. It felt like you couldn't even move 10 feet without bumping into a tracksuit. After cutting my way through the chaff, I captured a Nox. Elphedron was my heaviest hitter now, next to Mamarest. I mounted and began fighting even more Syndicate thugs. It just never ends. I parachuted down this hall, only to find a chest with some pretty mediocre loot, unfortunately. Fought more thugs, and when I went to dismount Elphedron, I got stuck in the wall. Left with little option, I hit respawn. I respawned on a new island, somewhat near where I bid it, and I ran into a cowardly islander. I didn't really care much for what he had to say, and began the long flight back to my belongings. I managed to get my stuff back no problem. I was really worried it would have despawned. The end dungeon boss was a huge turtle guy, totally not Bowser. Haha, Nintendo, am I right? Nudge nudge, wink wink. I'm in constant pain. Digitoys was kind of a pushover. I did have a super-powered Elphedron, sure. With minimal effort and a lot of dodge rolling, I managed to capture him. The chest loot was kind of meh, honestly. As I was flying around, I found a Syndicate camp. This one had a machine gunner. The sheer number of Syndicate thugs. The machine gunner, this Relaxosaurus that wouldn't mind its own business for some reason. It was just too much. So I retreated and opted to pick them off one by one on this grassy hill, armed with nary but a trusty musket. I was getting some Revolutionary War vibes from this. Tally-ho, lads, give them no quarter. The machine gun guy was a bit tricky to deal with. I tried to catch him a few times, but after a few attempts I just gave up. That pal that was trapped in the cage was actually a Tansy. Dang, if I had known that, I would have just left him in there. Tansy is a fairly common pal. I found another camp and freed the Nox from this cage. All in all, this was a huge waste of bullets. I did find a huge dragon egg in my travels, with just a small 2-hour incubation time, nothing to worry about. My quest for world bosses continued. I explored a new land and saw these curious creatures that looked like mops. The small ones were called Swee, and the big one was called a Sweepa. I tried to catch the mustached Sweepa, but it passed out before I could get to it. I did capture a Swee though. Second time, I caught a Sweepa and moved on. I stopped a few times to liberate the land from the plague of the Syndicate, and when I flew across the lake, I saw a massive Yormantide. This thing was way out of my league, but I wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. I lined up my shot and tickled the great worm. You can probably imagine what happened next. People say that pals look like Pokemon, but this guy looks like a Seadramon, honestly. It took a good portion of day 39, but I got my stuff back. I did catch the Serpent as well. All it took was shooting it in the head, and using a super pal sphere. Yet, I still feel hollow. I found another boss dungeon and entered. This was a Relaxosaurus Lux, the electric version of the Relaxosaurus. I thought it said Relaxosaurus Rex, which sounds cooler, honestly. Before this fight, I went to eat a can of green beans for dinner, and the can opener didn't open the lid all the way. I went to force open the can lid with a fork, and my hand slipped over the lid, causing me to get a huge gash in my right pinky. It was really horrendous, and there was a lot of blood. I legit almost passed out, so I apologize if my playing seems a little jank. I was doing this with a mortal wound. With the help of Mamarest, we caught the gluttonous Thunder Dragon. I was in a lot of pain IRL, so I went straight home and dealt with my cut. I placed down another grinder and set my new pals on the base and watched them work for a little while. I noticed that Digtoys was hitting the mining pit really hard, and he was a natural. With him, I'd never want for stone again. Short day today, my hand was still in pain, and I didn't do much. I was out and about exploring today, in a dark wooded area. I ran across a Grintail and began fighting it. Since it was a lower level, it was easy. Later in the day, I found a pack of Gory Rat. Gory Rat? What kind of name is that? I thought this was going to be business as usual, but I got flattened. When I respawned, I saw a desert runaway and ran up to him to talk. He told me of a desert that lay to the north, and I wanted to explore it. But before I could go do that, I needed to craft myself some heat-resistant armor. I picked up my stuff and went round 2 with the Gory Rat. He was a tough little bugger, and I used a good amount of pal spheres on him, until I whipped out the Mega Sphere. Once again, I was low on metal, and set out to farm some so I could craft some heat-resistant armor. While I was crafting my new set of armor, I was raided. The raiders had realized their mistake and began running away, and I gave chase. This demon goat guy stopped for some reason, and I caught it. He went to work right in the mines. I got right back to crafting my armor. I wanted to get into the desert with expedience. Never mind the fact it took most of the day to craft this armor, honestly. Van Worm and I fast traveled and crossed the sea to this new uncharted land. This desert was home to new types of pals that I had never seen before, like the robin quill Terra. As I was flying, I saw it. A lavender! I engaged in combat with it, on the ground. With the help of my new heavyweight champion, Mamarest. The battle raged on for a few minutes. Every pal sphere I tried to use would just bounce off of the lavender, and I had to, unfortunately, begrudgingly, leave the fight. But I did leave with something, the knowledge of where they spawned. So that was a victory in its own way. I flew around the desert today looking around for more lavanders. I didn't find any at all. I just flew around aimlessly, looking for who knows what. I eventually came across a PIDF tower, but I couldn't go inside. And I found this fast travel location, so that would make getting here easier in the future. I found myself a shiny Toko and engaged it. I let Mamarest out, and the tornadoes began to fly. I didn't do much to help, so I just ran around in circles. When Mamarest went down, it was time for Relaxosaurus Lux to take his place. The Toko blew up, and took my Relaxosaurus with it. And then I was next. When I got back to the desert, I didn't have any heat-resistant gear on me, and it was a race against the clock to get all of my stuff back before I died again. Luckily, I made it just in time. I went out to explore the desert, and as soon as night fell, I encountered something I completely forgot about. Deserts at night can become very cold. I was nowhere near the fast travel, and my health was dropping like a sack of bricks. Unfortunately, the cold had claimed me. I laid down for sleep on day 44, and when the sun rose, I was being raided by lavenders. I was caught without my gear, and I was in a full-blown panic. I searched desperately through all of my chests for any pal spheres. The lavenders began to retreat, and I tried to attack them, hoping they would stop to fight back. No luck. I managed to trap one in a sphere, but it broke out and despawned right before my eyes. I was super frustrated. I had a handful of lavenders handed to me, and I missed my shot. I headed back to the desert to grab my stuff. I found a cave to explore and ran across these Pyren Noct. They were way too strong for me. It was nighttime again, and I was freezing to death. I let out Arsox to see if he would help me warm up, but it really didn't make any difference. I was once again too far away from the fast travel beacon, and I died once again. I needed a break from the desert, and I decided to stay home today and spend time with my pals and catch up on some chores. As the sun went down, once again, I headed into the desert, but I was cold again, which is weird because when I first came to the desert, I wasn't freezing to death at all, so it doesn't make much sense. But it is what it is. I went back home and started farming the ore needed to make some cold-resistant armor. I slowly watched my Incineram smelt ore into ingots. I couldn't do much else, so I just chilled. When the sun came up, I made a lot of hatcheries to hatch all of these eggs that I had collected in the past 47 days. After all this time, I was swimming in ancient civilization parts, a key ingredient to make specialized structures and equipment. I finally crafted my cold-resistant armor, and headed back into the desert. After flying around most of the night, without any luck, I did spot a lavender, and fired off a shot to get her attention. A huge fight broke out, and I used a mix of pals and gunfire to fight this lavender. She was tough, and we were barely making a dent. We fought well into day 48. It was approaching noon. This random beacon shows up out of nowhere, and began to fight the lavender, and managed to knock her out. My blood boiled. I saw red. We triple-teamed this beacon and knocked it out of pure spite. In hindsight, I should have probably caught it and made it work for me forever. That would have been the better revenge. Oh well. For the rest of day 48, I spent most of my time farming the materials to make a sphere assembly, which would allow me to craft more powerful pal spheres. I will say, I got it crafted, but I never used it, so I'm going to move straight on to day 49. I got the assembly line placed, and saw the requirements to get this thing running, so I turned 360 degrees and walked away right into day 50. Since Megaspheres were out of the question, I did craft a decent amount of Gigaspheres. I headed back into the desert at night, and I didn't find any lavenders at all. I checked the entire coastline for them too. Nothing. The sun rose into day 51, and I went back home. Well, no lavenders, but I did feel powerful enough to take on this Mamarest boss that we've been seeing for the past 50 days. I kited it with my musket and cycled between all of my strongest pals. Seeing a Mamarest that's the size of a semi-truck chasing you fills a man with a primal fear. My Mamarest was a real trooper, and was the MVP of this entire fight. He didn't do an insane amount of damage, but his tornado attacks allowed me to create gaps between the Mamarest and myself. And I was very meticulous between swapping my pals, taking care not to let them pass out. However, the more the fight raged on, the more tired we became, until my pals started to faint one by one. At the last moment, we caught the boss Mamarest. I quickly ran home to swap out my pals. Night was approaching, and I wanted to take another shot at getting a Lavender. Luckily, I didn't have to go very far at all. The Lavenders were spawned right at the teleporter, and we engaged in our final fight. Since the Lavenders were very strong, I used that boss Mamarest to lay down some serious DPS. One Lavender went down, I hit level 30, and I threw a desperate Pal Sphere. Time froze. The capture number got higher and higher until... success! I did it! I caught the remaining one and headed right home, and as the sun rose into day 52, I pet my Lavender.
Warning. Viewer discretion.
In this episode of 100 Days, Palworld, we will soon discover that being loud equals funny, or having no personality will get you tons of views. Why is this phenomenon? Stay tuned to find out. I never follow this plot. My PC had a blue screen of death wiping the save from my list of worlds, but thanks to a YouTube tutorial, I managed to restore it. During that week when I didn't play on this save file, I played on a different world and learned so much about Palworld. I needed to make some changes, and I needed to get this one back on track. Yeah, my computer blue screened again, and day 52 does not exist. I got myself a Gale Claw on day 52, but that footage is gone, so here I am, making a set of gloves for the Gale Claw. The best glider in the game, and it will never leave my party. My starter base was feeling a bit cramped, and I wanted to move to a better location. For those of you who are curious about where I'm settling next, it's right by the Pen King boss dungeon on the beach. I got my PAL box placed and began the long process of moving. I finally finished moving and I had a dragon sword of ancient civilization parts, and I made some incubation stations for the pile of PAL eggs that I had accumulated. I got myself a Pyronoct and a Wixen. I liked Wixen, and I'd use him a lot later on in the video. I was also waiting on that huge dragon egg that I got a while ago, and I'm just now starting to hatch it. I wanted to make some eggs of my own, so I built myself a breeding ranch too. This might be way too many incubation stations, but hey, the more the merrier, right? After I hatched my final egg at my old base, I said goodbye and glided to the fast travel with my Gale Claw, and went home to check up on all the eggs I was incubating and hatched a few. I got some okay ones, but I didn't waste too much time at home because I was back at it in the world. With Van Worm, I flew deep into the bamboo groves. I wanted to catch a Quivern. Quivern? I can't say these names, man. A giant fluffy dragon. The fight was super easy. I think it was because I was just a bit over-leveled. Hey, check it out, here's an awesome segue. I was on the other side of the island and I wanted to tame a bee guard. These little guys produce honey, a key ingredient to make cake. The item needed to make pals breed. I don't know how cake does that, but oh, I'm probably just overthinking this. The only problem with bee guard is that they have a penchant for blowing themselves up even at the slightest of provocations. But it did allow me to catch this crazy clip of me skeet shooting a Masanda. Amidst all the confusion, I did catch a bee guard, and eventually a Masanda as well. Before I went home, since I was in the area, I took on War Sect, a giant beetle. I was a complete PAL master with Wixen, weaving him in and out of combat before War Sect could do some serious damage. With a 1% chance of capture, I threw the PAL Sphere and caught him, no sweat. I woke up today and chose to create a fortress tavern thing, so here's the building montage. Man, I love building montages. I don't have to talk. All I gotta do is just clip together a bunch of footage. Isn't that awesome? Oh well, not many people make it this far in my videos anyway. So hey, if you made it this far, comment like Scooby-Dooby-Doo or I don't know. Just engage. I command it. Or don't. You're a grown person. I can't control what you do. Merely suggest. Please, I have a family to feed. I continue to build my new base into day 57. Here I was, creating a workshop attachment where I'll place all of my crafting stations. I also used this build to become familiar with Palworld's building mechanics. It was kind of wonky, but I think I figured out a few tricks to get things to work. After getting my workshop built, I celebrated by crafting myself a brand new grappling gun. And I just noticed as I'm reviewing this footage that I placed a bookshelf with alcohol next to my crafting station. Well, you know, nothing ever bad happens when you combine sharp objects and adult beverages. I wanted to build myself an assembly line, and I was lacking the electric organs needed to make one. So, off into the wilds I went with Warsect, and I farmed Univolt for some easy electric organs. While out and about, we stormed the Syndicate camp, and I freed a Mal Christ from its cage. After that distraction, I was back to farming organs. Before heading home, I encountered a Kelpsie that really didn't want to come home with me.
So, what's wrong, little buddy? Don't you want to work for me for eternity and leave your family and friends behind?
It eventually listened to reason, though. It didn't really have a choice. When I got home, I hatched that huge dragon egg and was gifted a Jormuntide Ignis. Ignis? This fire snake. The greatest fire pal in the game. Loud equals funny, right? In the background of my adventures, I was crafting a heater. A girl can never be too careful these days, am I right, fellas? I needed ammo, so I paid the merchants in the desert a visit and bought a few rounds. I was so excited to show the lady from the beginning of the game how much I was thriving in Palworld, and I paid her a short visit too. Here's what makes Jormuntide Ignis the best fire pal in the game. It has Kindling Tier 4, and it just smelts bars like there's no tomorrow. I needed more at some point. I crafted a power generator, officially marking my escape from the Dark Ages. With little else to do for the day, I worked on my base throughout the night. I found myself in the desert once again. This time I was flying over to the wildlife sanctuary to catch a Lineleen. I wanted one because it was a great utility pal for the base. I flew across the sea, not knowing what I'd find. There were a lot of powerful pals here, like Astegon. I really wanted to catch it, so I proceeded with caution. This Astegon was way stronger than any of my pals, and I was out of my league. The fight took almost all day, and with Warsec's help, I did get it down far enough to capture it. Unfortunately, it broke out of all of my pal spheres, and the regular pal spheres just weren't cutting it, so I put it down. It hurt a lot, and I would find out very soon that I would come to regret this decision. Astegon knocked out my Vanworm, so I was trapped in the wildlife sanctuary now. And as I was formulating a plan to leave, I saw this glowing pal down below named Orsurk. I knew it was kind of rare, so I tried my luck. The Orsurk took out most of my battle pals, and at the last moment, I threw a Gigasphere and caught it. So here's what I was talking about. At the time when I was fighting Astegon, I wasn't looking at my pal spheres, and I didn't see that I had an extra Gigasphere left, and my regret comes back to haunt me. When the sun came up, I took a leap and began swimming back to the shore. I made it, just barely. Little did I know at the time that there was a fast travel beacon down the beach, and I somehow missed it. I attracted the attention of the Syndicate, and they began shooting at me as I was trying to scale this cliffside. I took a leap of faith, and with my Gale Claw, I tried to grab the ledge, and yeah. Well guys, I tried. Now began the race against time to get my stuff back. I was woefully underprepared for this, and I was cooking alive under the desert sun. I died right before I could get to my stuff. And the third time, I did get my stuff back right before I died. And I was being chased by some beacon apparently. They shot at me with lightning. But with quick reflexes, I avoided another trip back to the base in shame. I crawled my way back to the desert city and went home. It took a while, but I finally made my Dig Twice a headband, and with this special ability, Drill Crusher, I was farming ore like a baller. I spent most of the day farming ore and dropping it off at my base to be smelted. As the sun set, I heard the familiar sound of a lucky pal chiming. I didn't have any pal spheres on me, and if I left the area, it would just despawn. Quickly, I fashioned a workbench and made a few pal spheres and began the fight. I was naked to free up some carry weight, and paid the price for it a few times. I was really squishy, and relied mostly on my pals to do the heavy lifting. Somehow the Smelpaka aggroed the Mamorest boss, and they began fighting. Right at the last moment, I saved the Malpaka from dying, and it joined my team. I started off the day with some farming, and with the ore I gathered we crafted 2 cooking stations. This would allow me to craft the coveted cake. I wanted to breed for an Anubis as soon as possible, and this cooking pot would allow me to expedite the process. The Jormuntide Ignis was a beast at cooking. I crafted a handful of Gigaspheres and headed out to tame some more pals. First up was King Paka, and with the help of Orsurk, we got him tamed up. The second boss was this Fanglope, and Orsurk is probably too strong for our own good. I'm not too terribly shaken up about it. I'll get a Fanglope later through breeding. Next, I wanted an Aqua Broncherry. It was too dark, and I couldn't find it, and I spent most of the night just wandering around looking for the cave. I found the Aqua Broncherry cave and let Orsurk burst it down into capture range. My thought process was, surely it won't be able to take it from 800 HP to 0 with one attack. Well, I guess I was wrong. After that loss, I flew over to the Palworld boss arena and wanted to try my luck at capturing it, with success. While flying around, I heard the all too familiar chime of a Lucky and searched the area, and I found a Cinemoth and smacked it to get its attention. It made all of the other Cinemoths in the area get mad, and they started to dogpile me. Moth pile? Moth pit. And I began rolling for my life, sneaking out a cheeky Palsphere before biting it. What happens next is quite confusing. That's not me editing the video to cut suddenly like that. That's the actual recording. I flew back to get my stuff and noticed that my game was bugged? Glitched? The Cinemoth capture screen wasn't going away, so I guess I caught the Lucky? Alright, I won't complain, I'm just confused. A quick relog solved the issue, and I was back at it. Before calling it a day, I found this Fellbat boss, and I tamed it up no problem. Today I wanted to start breeding pals. Whoa, not so fast there, Tiger, not me breeding with them, making them breed with each other, calm down. But I was missing one important thing. Eggs. I needed a lot, so I went out and tamed more chicky pies, I never solved this. More chicken pals. And to keep my dairy fresh, I placed a cooling box. I had some eggs to get started and queued up cake for Jormuntide, this giant fire snake to cook. I'm really becoming unhinged. I really just don't care anymore. Here's where things get a little confusing. My computer blue screened so much during this playthrough, so I'm not sure what the actual day is. My notes say it's day 65, but I don't know really. I apologize. I can't afford to fix it. Bear with me. I could just make a 100 days Minecraft video and put a picture of a small animal crying on the thumbnail. That seems to get traction. Or talk like a plank of wood. I don't know. YouTube makes me mad. I, at some point, caught a Hell Zephyr. I scrubbed through hours of footage looking for when I caught this guy, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, if you breed a Hell Zephyr and a Lovander, you get an Anubis. I don't know how. I didn't make this game. While these two lovebirds reptiles got to know each other a bit better, I did chores around the base. I mostly spent the day doing odd jobs around the base. I was attempting to breed the perfect Anubis worker. I say attempting because this was just a dice roll, honestly. It's all up to RNG if you get the pal you want. I also farmed ore that was around the base. Digtoys' drill crusher was really cool to watch, and it's really loud. Check it out. Here's a neat trick. If you're encumbered, you can use your grappling gun to pull yourself over to a chest to free up inventory. Subscribe for more Palworld tips and tricks. And my computer blue screen again. Never in my days has my computer blue screened so much. As I was breeding pals, I got this insane Petalia, and I did get a couple of Anubis. I began to craft my Hell Zephyr a saddle, and just watch how fast Anubis crafts stuff. Oh, it's perfect. I would end up breeding a lot more Anubis throughout the next few weeks. They are just that good. I also wanted to breed a perfect Anubis with work traits, Artesian, Lucky, Serious, and Workaholic. I got pretty close, but didn't quite make it, unfortunately. With the Hell Zephyr saddle crafted, I took it out for a test flight, and it was so much better than Van Worm. Friendship ended with Van Worm, new friendship established with Hell Zephyr. Today I fought Lily and Lylene while waiting for pals to breed. Wixen and Hell Zephyr were the MVPs in this entire fight, so I just stayed back mostly. Oh, Urzurk was there too, I guess. Or Zurk, I don't know. When we were fighting, I didn't think we'd make it honestly, but we managed to just scrape by with a small victory. On the ground floor, I noticed a foxicle and quickly caught it before heading home. Whoa, day 69! For the funny number day, I tried fighting the Sibylix and it didn't go too well. On day 70, I got my stuff back. That's it. Some days are just shorter than others. I was tired of having metal bottlenecks. With Hell Zephyr by my side, we flew to a new metal base location. I saw a YouTube video giving the optimal metal and coal base build. I forgot the name of the video, so I apologize. But the layout is fairly simple. Make a platform in the center of this plateau, and here you will build a PAL box and place your smelting forges. The layout allows resource nodes to respawn unobstructed. Of course, the Mosando were not happy about being relocated. After clearing out the locals, I spent the entire day getting this new base established, and I'd finish setting it up a bit more later. Anubis is hands down the best labor PAL in the game. And in the background, I was still trying for the perfect one, but that was taking way too long, so I just decided to print Anubis by making Lovander and Hell Zephyr get busy. Any Anubis is better than no Anubis. I only have 30 days left too, and I got stuff to do. I noticed something quite peculiar. Every time I traveled between bases, some of my pals were incapacitated. Now, I know we enslave pals to do our bidding, and working conditions could be better, and a steady diet of cooked berries probably isn't healthy, but I have the sneaking suspicion they're jumping off the cliff near my base. Nothing set in stone, but it seems likely. My metal farm was booming, and with this massive success of my new base, my metal troubles were all but solved in this playthrough. I'm not sure the exact math, but I think it generates to roughly about 300-ish metal per hour passively, which is great. Oh, I would also like to mention, I don't remember taming these Suzaku. I'm gonna be real, taming every single pal takes a backseat in this 100 days. I did get pretty far, but it wasn't my main focus. It probably should have. It's easy content. I got my second base running at full functionality, and it was full hands off now. But the most important thing today, I wanted to catch an Astagon. So I flew over to the nature preserve, and they weren't spawning, so I tried my luck catching other pals, like this Incineram Noct. It spirit bombed my Hell Zephyr, stranding me once again, but it died thanks to Ozark. And the Shadowbeak that died made me. Well, at least I wasn't stranded anymore. I came back the next day hoping for an Astagon. Instead, I got myself a Lylene, one of the best medicine pals, if not the best. After we caught her, an Incineram Noct once again killed my Hell Zephyr, stranding me yet again. You think I would learn at this point. As I jumped across the ocean, I tried to catch a Hang-Yu, but I caught a case of death instead. I came back to get my stuff, and headed back to my metal base to AFK for the dawn. I was kind of getting tired of my Relaxosaurus Lux. He really didn't do much to help out around the base, so Quiverin and I flew out searching for a Mossanda Lux. Why Mossanda Lux, you may ask? Well, Mossanda have the ability to help cut down trees. They haul stuff into storage boxes, and the Mossanda Lux would help keep my base powered while I was gone. Quiverin and I engaged the Mossanda Lux, and we were interrupted by Syndicate thugs. I wasted a lot of spears trying to get this Mossanda Lux, but we eventually got it, and I was doing the Lord's work before heading back home. For some reason, my Anubis were passing out while I was gone. I suspect they were falling off the cliff still. And hey, while we're here, here's a cool trick. If you want pals to recover faster, just drop them into your base, and your other pals will carry them to an empty bed. For some reason, this heals them faster. After taking a step back and looking at the numbers, every time I post a Palworld video, I see people unsubscribing in droves. So I'm going to do what no YouTuber has ever done in a 100 days video. Speedrun the last 25 days to the finish, sacrificing the absolute bag I make on YouTube just to get out of this video so I can jump to the next one that will inevitably be suppressed by YouTube's ever oppressive algorithm. I had a whole big finale planned and I was going to throw in an extra 50 days at the end as a treat, but no, this is why we can't have nice things. So, here we go. Day 76, upgraded all of my secondary gear and fought a boss. She kept escaping spears, so I killed her and caught a big Gumas. Day 77, I went out farming pals, getting the bones was trash, so I fought King Alpaca for sellable stuff and bought them from a merchant. Day 78, I farmed quartz in the snow and I tried to fight a Wumpo and it soloed my entire team, stranding me. I died, formulated a plan to make pelt armor, sold a bunch of stuff to get shirts, got my stuff back. Dang. Day 79, I got tired of waiting for Laxorus and Surfent to make Paldium, so I said F it and bred to make a Yormantide, and made my assembly line finally, made Ultra Spheres. Day 80, came back after a long break from the save, and I have no idea what I'll do, so I guess I'll just tame Bronze Cherry Aqua. Tried to tame Zoe and Grisbolt, didn't work. Day 81, I made my refined metal armor and bred to a Yormantide to replace the slower water pals at my base, and noticed a huge improvement. Day 82, fought Mammorest to power level pals, and then I fought Villette, accidentally killed it sadly. Day 83, found a lucky Suzaku, wasn't taking no for an answer, spent all day fighting it, caught it at night, I am the luckiest man alive. Day 84, crafted Suzaku with a saddle, flew around looking for an Astagon, couldn't find one, Suzaku is a great flyer, dang. Day 85, wanted to tame an Astagon but couldn't find any. Headed for the world boss, found out if you want to waste a lot of resources, use the scatter cannon, had no balls, so I left. Day 86, finally caught Astagon. Day 87, caught Valet, tried to catch Marcus, it didn't work. Day 88, caught Marcus, wanted to have a few levels, and wanted to craft a new shield, needed to farm polymer and quartz for new assembly line. Day 89, crafted assembly line 2, made a new cook station and hyper shield, made pizza, and power leveled by taming alpha pals. Day 90, went out and tamed some new pals to get more XP, tamed a few Yormantide Ignis and a Wumbo Botan, went to snow biome, caught a Sibilix, and died to cold. Day 91. Farmed pals for oil, made electric furnace, crafted myself pal armor. I was a mega tank now, and could easily fight Zoe and Lily. I felt so powerful, I was practically a demigod. Day 92. Tried to fight Dude in Orzurk again. Didn't do enough DPS. Made a shotgun, sold all of my trophies, made a lot of money. Day 93. Bought a lot of shells, tried to tame my stallion, didn't work. Power leveled new pals. Day 94. Went back to fight Frostallion again. The little fellow was really annoying and ran through my entire team and ate all of my legendary spears. It's such BS, man. Day 95. I tried to fight Frostallion again. I really need to rethink my strategy. I might need to use a glider. Day 96. Still, after this Frostallion, the glider sucks. So bad compared to the Gale Claw. Oh my god, man. I would have had it if the glider didn't suck so bad. Day 97. Still at it, .mp4. Day 98. Made a lot of prep to fight Frostallion again. Was going in with a lot of grenades. Day 99. Said F it. Built a pal box next to Frostallion and just threw all my pals at it. Died a few times, but we got the Frostallion. Day 100. I bred Frostallion Noct and leveled up. Made Astagon a saddle. Wanted to make Relaxosaurus a saddle too. And thus concludes my 100 days in Palworld. You see this here? This is a funny dog wearing a hat. And this is a crazy ninja, ready to cut you into sashimi at a moment's notice. And this is the greatest waifu of our time. Welcome, my Glahm fam, to Sakurajima Island, a brand new addition to the game Palworld. Before we get into today's video, I have some goals I'd like to achieve. I'd like to actually play 100 days and not rage quit. And that's about it. So, make yourself uncomfortable, don't grab a drink, and let's get into the video. Also, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out, please. Shameless e-begging done. I spawned in on the windswept hills and began searching these ruins for chests to get a head start on my hoarding problem. I found this collectible bit of lore that I would never read, and opened this blue chest containing some pal spheres in gold. Like any other 100 days, we begin our ascension to power by punching things that can't defend themselves very well. Like this lamb ball that was just chilling and minding its own business. And, of course, I took issue with that. These hands are rated E for everyone. I activated this pylon with an orange light, and this is a fast travel beacon that would allow us to travel across the island easier. After talking to this weary survivor, I got busy beating this chicken to a pulp, and got to work collecting berries so I wouldn't starve. You see, I wasn't going to settle here in the windswept hills. I wanted to set up shop somewhere new this time, and I began running across the hills. This chicken at my side. In my travels, I found this fox sparks and caught it. The fight with the fox sparks left me on death's door, and I made the very smart decision to immediately engage a fight with this pengullet right after. The pengu didn't take kindly to my slight and fought back. I heroically ran away to hide and let my pals fight it for me. And I eventually ended up catching it. As the sun began to set on day 1, I unlocked another fast travel beacon and found this depresso that was giving me funny looks. So I did what I had to do. With a handful of pals I caught today, I was feeling great about my progress, and I decided to rest for a little while. I was still running the next day, and by the coast I found one of the new pals in the Sakurajima update. This little guy was called Croajiro, and I wanted to catch it. At the time, I didn't know these guys were very aggressive to players, so I swam out to push it back ashore, and it ended up unaliving me. After I got my stuff back, I tried again. This time I had the help of my depresso. My first fear toss was laughably bad, but the second one was right on target. I decided to catch his brother too, so he wouldn't be so lonely. In the hills, I saw another pal tamer walking around, and then I talked to him. This man was a level 10 with a heater and some decent armor. I was a level 3 with some sticks and rocks. He wanted to fight me, of course, and somehow I managed to beat him. But the gobfin that he had summoned smeared me all over the grass. During the day, I encountered another pal tamer, as you can probably guess. He wanted a piece of me, so I gave him the whole enchilada, and after he went down, I wanted to try something. Can I actually catch this? No way. What? You can just capture their pals. I should just put these guys on farm. I guess it makes sense now that their master is, you know, not in the realm of the living anymore, I suppose. They would need a new home. I was kind of tired of running around all the time and decided to just settle down in the marshlands. I don't know why. This wasn't a very good base location. There were barely any resources. and there were wild pals that would just wander into the base all the time. There was a lucky flak nearby, and while the iron was hot, I decided to strike and get this dire howl too. These guys are the best early game mounts. They run really fast, and their saddles are relatively cheap to craft. I also noticed this syndicate camp. I didn't collect the pal in the cage for some reason. Yeah, I don't know why either. When I got back to my chosen place of residency, it was overrun by dire howl. So, with Depresso at my side, we fought off the pack, and we had the upper hand until the last moment. When I didn't, this dire howl took me down with it. After I got my stuff back, I decided it was time to quit messing around, and I crafted a workbench, a repair bench, and a pal workbench. The pal workbench would allow me to create stuff for pals, like saddles, gloves, collars, the chains in which to... Wait, I can't say that on YouTube. I had no wood though, so I bare-knuckled this tree and made myself an axe, a stone pickaxe, and a fresh set of clothes. Now that I was completely dripped out, I could focus on what really mattered, like farming resources for the rest of the day. After some time, I got my little base set up, completed with pal box, beds, and some berry crop plots so my pals wouldn't be tempted to eat each other while I'm not looking. And the next day, I placed down a couple of hot springs to keep my little Amazon workers happy. I am nothing if not benevolent. And I noticed that the Depresso, well, my boy was looking a little blue. He was hungry, and like the responsible pet dad I am, I fed him. My base was actually looking like a habitable environment now. Sure, we were sleeping under the stars and bug-infested marshland, but it's all about the experience, dang it, and there's nothing wrong with roughing it a little. The final cherry on top was building a statue to our god, Anubis, the Egyptian god of death. I'll be on the cover of Better Homes and Gardens this month for sure. That was a joke for all the moms who are forced to watch my videos to keep their kids happy. Get yourself some wine. You're gonna need it. As I was farming some metal, I noticed Depresso. In the grand scheme of things, he's an amalgamation of ones and zeros, but seeing him like this made me feel pretty bad. So I hoisted him over my mighty shoulder and threw him face down into a hot spring. Hey, you're okay, right? You can... Depresso, you can breathe, right? Wake up, buddy! Oh no, he stopped moving. I'm just gonna walk away. Toward the end of the day, I built myself a grinder, and this would break down materials into base components, like wood into fiber, and stones into palladium fragments, and I was ready to enter the metal age, so I crafted a smelter as well. The next day I spent the morning farming up metals, and began smelting the ore into ingots. I wanted to upgrade my harvesting tools as soon as possible. Later that day, I was ready to build myself a high quality workbench, and this grants me the ability to make better tools and armor, and instead of getting some much needed upgrades, I farmed a lot of stone. And built another hot spring too, apparently. By the time it was finished, I had enough metal smelted and I crafted myself a metal axe, and it would allow me to farm wood faster. And I also made myself a new metal pick. Walking around everywhere wasn't very ideal for the long game, so I gathered the resources to craft a dire howl saddle finally. My man, Flack, assisted me in this project, and in no time at all, we were ready to hit the road, and I began exploring the land, when all of a sudden, a meteorite crashed down. At the time, I had no idea what this was, and I was excited to have a look. When I arrived at the crash site, I saw two new pals named Xenovator attacking some syndicate lackeys. It took a long time to climb to the summit of this hill, and the Xenovators were standing still guarding the meteorite, so I threw out my Croagero to fight them. That was a mistake, because they hit like an absolute space truck. Thinking quickly, I cheekily ran in and rolled over the fragments to collect them, and then I ran for my life. I managed to escape my pursuers with the help of my dire howl, and we cut it pretty close. When the sun rose, I spent the morning farming chickens for meat and eggs, and ran over to catch some Vixie. With this new update, if you put Vixie in a ranch structure, they will harvest pal spheres, arrows, and other goodies for you. You can rank them up as well, giving you better rewards. But that's a lot of work, so I probably won't be doing that. Dire Howl and I ran into a syndicate camp and began clearing out the riffraff, and I managed to catch this syndicate man by complete accident. This wasn't intentional on my part. My finger had slipped on the controller, and he just kinda happened to be standing there at the time. And we left as quickly as we arrived. And I found myself in this neat area. There was a black market merchant in this mineshaft, so I marked the location. I ran down this mineshaft tunnel to try and get some easy money from the black marketer, but to catch him I couldn't build a sling under his feet. Let me explain what I'm doing here. So basically, you can sling these guys up and build a campfire under them and they'll take damage. When they perish, they drop stuff like gold and keys. It might work in other areas, just not here I guess. No matter. I'd farm these guys later on with stronger pals. The next day, Dire Hal and I were out and rooting around for trouble like a couple of hungry hogs, and I found this gory rat that bodied these 2 free pal alliance dudes. He was the chosen one. I caught him and added him to my collection. I felt in my soul that it was time to return home, for now. So I grabbed another fast travel and headed back to base. I was ready to build myself a few ranches now, and get my production underway. With the help of my pals, we began to lay the foundations to Ram Ranch. I also apparently caught this rush orb, but I don't remember doing it. Oh well. My Vixie started producing materials, and I returned back to that fallen meteor and began harvesting the space rock. I had no idea what this stuff would be for, but it must be important, right? In Palworld, I become a very bad loot goblin and hoard so much trash later on. Dire Hal and I traveled further than we have ever gone, and I was in no man's land. To say I was lost would be quite the understatement. So naturally, I looked for water, and found water I did, as well as a surf rent that I had fought tooth and nail to capture. I climbed a mountain to get my bearings on the land and stumbled backwards into another syndicate camp, with a Toko asking politely to be rescued, so I obliged. Dire Hal and myself were in dangerous territory now, here Relaxosaurus roam, so I had to catch one. Heroically, I hid behind cover while my pals fought the water balloon dinosaur bravely. I managed to capture one of them, and when the chips are down, you hit and go for double or nothing. So I got myself another Relaxosaurus while I was here. Relaxosaurus is quite the versatile pal. Through clever use of genetical finagling, you can get one of the best worker pals in the entire game, the Anubis. Around this time in game, it's around day 7-ish. Day 7 Anubis is pretty busted. As the sun began to settle, I ran across this lucky Ribbunny and caught it with a 1% chance. Yeah, it was pretty goofy. Not too far away was another syndicate camp, with a flambelle this time. I freed her and dipped. The next morning, I got a dose of American-style breakfast and got a one-way ticket to the Shadow Realm. I'll save both of us some time and snap right to the part where I free the Arsox in the cage, and got my stuff back. I ran as fast as my shapely legs could carry me, and jumped off of a cliff, 90s action movie style, and headed back home to heal my pals. My Vixie farm was working like a charm, and I was flush with pal spheres. I'm not even gonna lie, this is so much better than farming for palladium fragments. Plus, you can sell them for a tiny profit, which is exactly what I set out to do. I headed to Mount Obsidian to unlock the fishing village fast travel. The trip would be dangerous, fraught with peril, and powerful pals. Fanatical psychopaths that set themselves on fire for some reason. Look, I'm just trying to build up the drama and suspense, okay? The run over here was really uneventful. After checking out the shops, I had my fill and headed back home. I felt like now was a good time to fight my first alpha pal, the wild Chillette boss. An icy ferret dragon thing? For some reason, my brain completely shut down during this fight, and Dire Hal managed to get the killing blow. I guess this is what happens when you're distracted by video essays on the other monitor. By this time, I was around level 17, and I could finally unlock the incubation station to hatch my pal eggs. But my quest for power wasn't sated yet. I wanted to capture a personal favorite pal of mine, Catress. The fight against Catress wasn't too insanely difficult, but I was still kind of underleveled, so this fight would be an uphill battle. Catress ran through my entire team, and I got cooked alive. I decided to put a pin in this endeavor for now, and return to base to build an egg incubator so I could get this show on the road. On day 12, I made myself a brand new bow, the 3-shot bow. As the name suggests, it shoots 3 arrows instead of 1, duh, and it would also double as a means to get the flying pals out of the sky, allowing for easier capture. With my new upgrades, it was time to go round 2 with Catress. The battle was very slow going. I was running with mostly water pals, and the only counter I had to Catress was my Relaxosaurus, because it's a dragon water type, but he didn't have any dragon attacks yet. I'm going to assume you know what type weaknesses are already since you've clicked on the Palworld video, but I guess I can explain once more for the parents that have me going in the background to keep little Jonathan occupied while you do whatever it is you're doing. Water goes against fire, fire beats grass, grass beats earth, earth beats electric, electric beats water, dragon beats dark, dark beats normal, normal beats, you know what, I actually don't know what normal beats, and ice beats dragon. So there you go. A crash course on Palworld rock, paper, scissors. Anyway, I managed to catch Catress after throwing my pals at her like a brick wall. Eventually something stuck, and Croagiro was my MVP. Catress was useful at night, since it didn't need to sleep like the other pals. And, with its help, I crafted myself a glider, so I wouldn't break my legs falling from high places anymore. I also made a Foxparks harness to use it like a flamethrower, and honestly, I don't think I ever used it. I also crafted myself a new set of armor as well. When the sun came up, I saw Tombat flapping near my base, so with Katress, I set out to catch it. And catch it, I indeed did. I also wasted a lot of pal spheres trying to catch these lamb balls. I noticed that a Nightwing, a giant bird pal, was actually eating the carcass of a lamb ball that mysteriously passed out and I had nothing to do with, no really, and I used the opportunity to attempt to capture. It refused to play ball, so I made it see some reason, and I had it come home with me. At some point, I also captured this Ecthyr deer, and I would never ever take it out of the pal box again. This would be the absolute last time this creature will ever see the brightness of the sun. And after exploring the marsh for a bit, we ran across this Studio Ghibli looking pal named Grintail, with Katress lending the assist. We caught it as well. Much like the deer, this pal will never see daylight ever again. After a pal taming spree, I returned back to base and hatched this fire egg that I found a little while ago. I won the lottery, and it became a Pyronoct. These guys ain't too super rare, but for my current level range, they were actually pretty good. And to finish the day, I placed the foundations for a logging camp and a stone quarry. They produce unlimited basic resources over time. I caught up on leveling my base today. This allows me to have more unpaid employees at my disposal, and depending on the base layout, this could be a good or bad thing. They changed a lot of things with this new Sakurajima update, but the pals, whew buddy, the pals are still dumb as rocks sometimes. You'll see what I mean later. Since I've played a lot of Ark, I'm used to really bad AI, and don't get me wrong, this must be a mega pain to program, but it does get really frustrating sometimes. And for some reason, I spent most of the day today AFK. Yeah, I'm not even really sure why. When nighttime happened, I placed down some walls to my disheveled hovel so I could sleep safely and soundly while my pals slept outside. And the next day, I got to work right away crafting a Nightwing saddle. I had an important mission coming up, and that was to get a Yormantide Ignis, the best fire pal in the game. I know it sounds like I hype these things up, but it's true. All you need to do is just head over to the volcano and get yourself a huge dragon egg. But before I could do that, I returned to the Chillat world boss and caught it right quick to fill out my pal deck, and then I returned home to craft myself a pal sphere workbench. This would allow me to craft more pal spheres to hunt bigger and badder pals. I hatched a verdant egg, and an Elizabeth popped out. I mean, I don't want to sound ungrateful, but the smaller bees are better because they produce honey when placed in a ranch. And when I was ready, I left the base and headed over to Hypocrite Hill. As soon as I spawned in, a meteorite fell to the ground, and now that I was around level 20, I could try my luck at capturing a Xenovader finally. Nightwing and I flew up, and the Xenovaders were dunking on the people in the camp. I used the confusion to my advantage, and caught them both. After catching the Xenovaders, I ran into this Gale Claw that was too legit to quit, and I was the one getting dunked on this time. I returned to the camp and gathered my stuff, and then headed over to the meteor to harvest fragments. I got lucky, and the meteor broke apart right away as my inventory hit its weight limit. Since I was in the area, I decided to fight this Petalia. I wanted to breed it with another pal to get a Lylene later. I gave it my all, coach, but it wasn't enough, and the Petalia put me out of my misery. Round 2, and I bit it again. I guess I decided it wasn't worth the effort and just collected my stuff and left. I headed over to my second base location that was rich in metal resources and placed down a fresh pal box to get things ready for later, and then I headed back home. I made myself a few more egg incubators. Oh, I also crafted a small feed bag. I'm not sure what the difference is between all the feed bags, but I got by with just this regular feed bag for the rest of this playthrough, so I didn't really bother with the rest. And it just makes it so your pals eat passively. I'm not gonna talk about it too much. The next day was the day I head to Mount Obsidian and get myself a dragon egg. But first, I needed to make myself some heat-resistant armor. I honestly don't know how you can make heat-resistant armor with pelts and furs, but hey, I guess in Palworld you can. I crafted up a grappling gun to get around easier, and headed to the volcano. When I arrived, I pet Xenovader for some reason, and ascended the summit of the volcano. Nightwing, to put it bluntly, was a very poor flyer. Of course, I don't expect it to be a very good one. It's an entry-level pal. But it moves so darn slow. It made me want to tear my hair out. Eventually, though, I made it to the summit. I unlocked the fast travel, and like a goofy goober, I attacked a herd of Kelpsie Ignis, and paid the ultimate price. When I got my stuff back, I saw a Wixen, and Wixen is one of my all-time favorite pals. Hashtag not a furry. So, I sprung into action and began fighting it for capture. I died, it rolled me, cooked me, flambéed, broiled, sautéed, crispified, and deglazed me. I tried to get my stuff back, but this wild Pyronoct did the same thing. I decided to just rush in and grab my stuff before fleeing like the coward I am. I wasn't about to have a conversation with this Blaze Howl that was giving me funny looks, and when it was safe to do so, I doubled back and headed home for now. I get that dragon egg a little bit later. After taking a break back at base, I was back at it again at the volcano. I flew around collecting the odd egg here and there. I searched high and low for a dragon egg, and I actually managed to find one. Mission accomplished. I left the volcanic region to rest over at this old castle, and found more Wixen. I once again tried my luck at capturing one. The other Wixen didn't like this idea and gave the assist to her brother. I managed to catch one, but sadly, the other one didn't make it. I saw a fast travel beacon in the distance, and made my way over, and I headed back home. I made myself a few more egg incubators and started hatching all of the eggs I've collected up until this point. Before too long, the first egg was ready to go, and I got at least Punk Ignis. But I didn't stick around at base for too long. I headed out to the bamboo forest to capture some new pals. And right away, I found these two Mammorest fighting for territory, and me, being the ever-opportunistic scavenger rat that I am, I wanted to try and catch one. The first one died right out of the pal ball. The second one, it was a home run. A slam dunk. I couldn't believe it. A Mammorest at level 22. I was in the bamboo forest for another reason. I wanted to try and capture the Beacon World boss. The fight raged until the next day. My pals were all incapacitated, and I bit the big one. Quite unfortunate, I made it back, and it was time for round 2 with this Kentucky Fried Fool. We got it pretty close, but this time, Wixen defeated it. Glahm, why aren't you using the Ring of Mercy? I hear you cry. My answer is quite simple. I didn't know it existed yet, XD. The rest of the day I spent it running around the bamboo forest with Direhow looking for more pals, and when Night offered her cold embrace to the world, I found these Cognito. And when I look at these things, I just think of a little funny plague doctors or something. I don't know, I just said that in my notes. I just read it out loud. I managed to catch myself a crow man, and these loot moon ran up on me. It was super dark, and I didn't want any of that, so I ran away. The next morning, I had managed to capture myself a Van Worm, so I could retire my Nightwing. Van Worm wasn't the best at flying, but it was far more suited to flying long distances than old Nightwing. I eventually found myself in Greeley, Colorado. Caught a few cows as well, or tried to anyway. This Mazzarina refused to accept its fate, and then a pack of Direhowl showed up and some Van Worms. Oh man, it was a disaster. And my Direhowl went down. So I legged it. Right into this pal tamer who wanted to rumble. She whipped out a Jolt Hog Crest on me. I laughed, so I used Wixen. I won. At this point I had my fill of adventure, and returned home, to heal my Direhowl and just chill for a bit. First thing in the morning I captured my prized egg, and out popped, you guessed it, the Yormantide Ignis. I was ecstatic. Oh, from the other eggs I got a Reptyro too, I guess. He's not as cool as the Fire Snake. After I hatched the eggs, I collected from the volcano. I crafted a Van Worm saddle, and the difference in flight speed and stamina, well, is, well, pretty noticeable. Next to my swamp was an area that I'm pretty sure was inspired by China. Please don't cancel me. And I'm not just saying that because of the Mossanda. Giant spires of rock jutted into the clouds, making this area one of my favorites. I caught a Mossanda and tried to capture this bee guard for some honey. These little guys like to explode themselves at the slightest provocation, much like people who chronically use Twitter. Hey yo, he's got the jokes. Please like and subscribe. Deep into the night, I caught another Mossanda, and I called it good. I needed to get myself a bee guard. These little fellows produced honey, and honey would be very crucial in the rest of these 100 days. Honey was the key component to making cake. Cake helps pals, you know, get in the mood, for lack of a better term. I don't know how cake makes pals feel that way, but it just does. My first expedition for Bee Guard ended in disaster, again and again, until I got lucky and managed to capture a couple. And when I caught enough for a small honey farm, I flew back to base. I noticed this Hellzephyr flying around, and I thought to myself, oh wow, what a great upgrade to Van Worm. I engaged it in combat, and then this stupid gob thing got involved and ruined the entire thing. And I didn't leave that fight alive. Naked and afraid, I went back to get my stuff, and died again. But I eventually did get my stuff back, and headed back to base and let my freshly caught bee guard loose into producing golden, silky honey right away. The base ingredient for cake is obviously flour, so to complement my freshly planted wheat farms, I made 2 mills to convert raw wheat into ground wheat, aka flour. I made more wheat crop plots and started to clear out some trees for future projects. The next day, I saw this lucky Gumas, please don't laugh, hanging out next to the base, and I had to have it. So I got to work whittling its health down and caught it no problem. The rest of the day was slow going. I spent it mostly wandering around the base, waiting for my water pals to produce the flour I needed to make cakes. So I upgraded a few things like this cooking pot instead of a campfire. The cooking pot would automatically cook food for you, regardless if you had a fire pal or not. On top of that, it made cooking a bit faster. After the entire day, I managed to craft one whole cake. Wow, now that's progress. I had my breeding ranch set up and ready to go as well, and I spent a little bit hatching a backlog of eggs that I had been collecting out in the world. From one of the eggs, I managed to get myself a Bushi, and he's one of my favorite pals. Not because I'm a massive weeaboo. Actually, yeah, it is. After I made a few more cakes, it was time to get the ball rolling, and I threw a Relaxosaurus into the pen with a Celeray, and these two would make an Anubis. All that was left to do was chores around the base and wait patiently for my new pal. And after a few minutes, an egg was given to me. But we had to wait a little bit before it would hatch. Then I spent the rest of the day staring at this cooking pot, apparently. Next up, I needed to get myself a Petalia, so here we go again. This time I had Wixen with me, and we cleaned shop. A little too well, because the Wixen had killed the Petalia. Well, shoot. So it was time for plan B. B stands for because I don't want to wait another hour for the boss in this dungeon to reset. With Van Worm, I flew over to the Wildlife Sanctuary A. Rare pals spawned here, so I decided to go on a taming safari and caught a few extra pals. I spent the night at the sanctuary looking for a Petalia, and my patience was eventually rewarded. I was very careful this time and caught it. Thank goodness. I could leave to make myself a Lylene. All I had to do was combine a Mossanda with this Petalia. I will not make a joke because it's low-hanging fruit. While waiting for the miracle of life to happen, this random Mammorest decided to come into my base, and it was looking for a fight. The only thing it found was a trip to the grave. And amongst all the ruckus, the egg I had been waiting for was laid. I had some time to kill waiting for my other eggs to hatch, so I farmed a little bit and called it an early night. Bright and early in the morning, I heard the siren's call of a lucky pal, and I began my search. This time, it was a lucky lamb ball, and I caught it. Another one for the pile. Pals took forever to breed, so I went out into the world to see what I could find, and I ended up back in the bamboo forest at the Syndicate camp. This was my first time encountering a Meemog. They are just pals that look like treasure chests, and they run away at super speed. And I gave chase, and eventually cornered it on the edge of this cliff. One cheeky pal ball later, and this little critter was mine. After flying around for most of the day, I ended up by the mud flats and caught myself my favorite pal, a Lovander. In my last Palworld video, there was some interesting comments about me being obsessed with Lovanders. I apologize for absolutely nothing. She was tricky to catch, but we eventually got it, after wasting a lot of pal spheres. When the sun rose into its zenith, I flew my way over to the Quivern boss arena and engaged in life or death combat with the white dragon, and captured it. Quivern is also one of my favorite pals too. So this was a much welcome breath of fresh air in this playthrough. I rushed back to base and hatched the earth egg that was holding an Anubis, and finally I could begin to actually just play Palworld normally instead of like a sweat. My genetic tampering wasn't finished, however, and I threw Quivern into the ranch and gave it a Relaxosaurus, and proceeded to play Palworld normally by AFKing for the rest of the day. I became bored of my base layout and decided now was a good time to upgrade Ram Ranch into something better. My plan was to add another breeding ranch so I wouldn't have to wait around all day for the pals to, you know, get done with their business, and I could keep the production going. And as we were tidying up, I hatched a common egg that contained a Lunaris. That was some insane RNG, if I do say so myself. They're the next best thing to an Anubis, as far as labor goes, I'm pretty sure. Looking at the layout of my egg incubators made me kinda sick, so I broke them down and moved them closer to the breeding ranches, so I could just chuck the eggs in instead of hobbling all over the base. Amidst my home renovations, the Syndicate decided now would be a great time to attack. They were promptly turned into Pal Chow. Later on, I started to build my new house from stone this time. I earned it. I wasn't too sure of the layout, so I just started throwing stuff down and changed it around as I saw fit. I'm not a super good builder. I'm more of a utilitarian type of person. If it has 4 walls and a roof with common anemones in it, yeah, I'm good. It was about time I got out of these drab furs and wore something a little more fashionable. And after scraping by for the past month, I had enough resources stockpiled to craft myself an advanced workbench, which I used immediately to upgrade my armor to Pal Metal Armor. And I also made a ton of arrows. For what purpose? Yeah, I don't know. But I used them at some point for something, I'm sure. Like fighting Zone Grisbolt. Or should I say Rizbolt? Brain rot joke. Anyway, in my last video, I had some people screeching in my comments about me making an inappropriate joke about Zoe sitting on my mighty shoulders like some kind of neckbeard waifu combiner. So, I won't make that joke again in this video. I was really overleveled for this fight, because I have a weird obsession with overkill when I play these types of games. Yeah, I don't know why. So we just mopped the floor with Zoe and Rizbolt, and I claimed her tower as my own. That left only 5 bosses. Which boss would I fight next? The answer may shock you. It was Panking. Panking in my last Palworld video gave me a ton of grief, and it died way more times than I care to admit. It was kind of embarrassing, honestly. But this time, it was a joke. I caught it in my first try. Wow. My next tower boss target was obviously Lily and Lylene, so I started making my way up north to fight them. I was feeling pretty confident that I would win. I entered the tower, and man, let me tell you, I was absolutely not ready for this at all. I managed to get them down just to half health before they mopped the floor with me and sent me packing home. When I spawned in at base, it was too late to go back and get my stuff, so I just hung out and dealt with this raid while I was waiting for the next day. I was a bit stuck because the mountain was too cold to traverse at night, and I would just die again anyway. Kinda like this. The next day, I grabbed my trash and entered the tower again. Realizing my horrible mistake, I tried to flee for my life, and I ended up getting smeared across the floor once again. The next day, I grabbed my stuff again and saw this Raindrix, and I tried my luck at catching one, and guess what? I died. Again. I died a few more times before this too. I'm just too lazy to edit them into the video. But yeah, trust me, it was a lot. After returning back to base with my tail between my legs, I went into Godfin's turf to fight a war sect, and hopefully catch it. After a super long fight, I got his health down enough to capture him. In the background, I was breeding pals to make a lot of Anubis, and hatched a ton of eggs. Look at this, 5 Anubis ready to work, ready to fight for me, their king, Glahm. Well, that certainly was a day, huh? Well, time for bed. The next day, I began constructing my metal base. This base would be my metal farm. I don't really know how much more I can explain it to you guys. I spawned in the Anubis, and they got to work mining right away. After leaving my Anubis to their own devices, I returned back to the old base and began crafting even more logging camps. In the future, I would need to craft a lot of carbon fiber for various things, so these would come in handy. Then it was back to the metal base to build the foundations. My pals would need an area where they can rest and bathe and eat. The base layout would be a gigantic horseshoe shape, or something like that. The courtyard would allow metal nodes to respawn unobstructed. So here's a chaotic mess of jump cuts disguised as a base building montage, cause I don't want to write anymore. On day 44, I hatched myself a legion of Anubis. I don't really remember how much exactly, but it was a lot. I would have enough to run at least 2 other bases efficiently. Now, I could have bred for an absolute perfect working Anubis, giving it workaholic, nocturnal, etc. But that would take a lot of time. And breeding has been changed in Palworld, I think, making the guaranteed traits of newborn pals very random. We'll get into all that a bit later. By this time in game, I was around level 29, and I read over the new technology I could unlock, and that's when I discovered the Ring of Mercy. While wearing this, you cannot bring a pal's health below 0. Wish I had known this when I was fighting that beacon. The next day I flew into the small village and purchased a witch hat schematic. This thing is mostly just cosmetic, and I got myself some bones for an upcoming project. You needed bones to make medicine and cement. Then I decided to catch this King Paka that was hanging out by the village. Since I was here, the fight wasn't an issue, and I was pretty overleveled for it. While flying around, I saw these old cathedral ruins and found another shady merchant inside, but the only form of currency he would take is dog coins. You could get these from searching trash piles, and I think you get them from Nemogs. I don't really know, I didn't even really try. Towards the evening, I flew around capturing fresh pals to fill out my pal deck, and even fought the Selphedron. It's not my favorite dragon in this game, but it's still kinda neat. When I arrived at base, I was raided by violent wild pals, but they quickly found out how violent my overworked and near-starving pals were. Around noon, I flew around to the bamboo forest and began capturing more pals, and I went to where the Kelpsie wandered around on the beach, and I tried to catch one, and this little goofball sent me through the ringer. It absolutely played me for a fool, and I almost died. When I was done, I headed back to my metal farming base and placed an assembly line that would allow me to craft more advanced item recipes and make stuff a bit faster. But I still needed electricity though, and I would just worry about that a bit later. The next day I built myself the Ring of Mercy, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, I would hardly use it in this playthrough. But I did use it at some point, rest assured. I decided that a Relaxosaurus Lux would be perfect electric pal to get things started at my metal base. I have fond memories when I first encountered this guy in my first Palworld 100 Days video, and if you didn't watch that video, basically I cut my finger open on a can of green beans and started bleeding all over my apartment. Fun times. I shed actual blood for that video that no one watched. Thank you, by the way. But that's alright because you're here now, watching, and that counts for something, at least, right? I got more than halfway through the fight when I realized that I didn't have any pal spears, so I rolled away to take my leave. I quickly returned to my base and grabbed some balls and teleported back to the Relaxosaurus Lux, and yeah, well, dang. I decided to go with plan B B, because I don't want to wait an hour for the boss fight to reset. I know I used this joke already, I'm just burnt out and hustling through at this point. So with plan A currently a stain on the floor in the dungeon across the world, I went with Masanda Lux, and he died too. It was now time for plan C. I would just make my own Relaxosaurus Lux. It wouldn't be the alpha version, but it would serve a noble purpose at least. My only dilemma is that it took a long time to cook cakes, and I only had one Yormantide Ignis. So I headed over to the volcano to fly over into the wildlife preserve to catch one, or two. If I could get a female, I could breed more Yormantide Ignis. My fire problems would be solved forever. I did find a Yormantide and got to work with one of my strongest Anubis. Unfortunately, in the distance, we had a Wumpo Bhutan, aka the situation rapidly approaching my location, so I backed off. When I'd back off, the Wumpo followed. Until, yep, instant transmission, and here we go again. I spent hours in this game fighting other Yormantide Ignis, when all of a sudden, guess who else decided to show up? At least I leveled up, I guess. When I came back, I used my big brain to formulate a strategy. I thought, what if I could catch myself a Wumpo Bhutan? They are very powerful after all. So, for the majority of the day, I went and fought a Wumpo Bhutan. It had cornered itself by the ocean, and the battle commenced. It was tricky to deal with, but as the sun was setting, we managed to capture it. I've had my fill of this sanctuary for now, and decided to head back home to make more quality pal spheres and rest up. My Yormantide Ignis that I had hatched from the egg a few paragraphs ago was my only tier 4 fire pal, so I would just have to share it between my bases. Not ideal. I'd rather have it stay at my metal base and smelt metal for me, but I need pal cakes too, so I brought it back to my first base and let it do what it did best. Get caught on anything and everything and glitch out, breaking the fragile AI shoestring code that holds its existence together. I really do not like to skip over days too much. I did record 100 days and then some, but when reviewing the footage of day 57 through 63, nothing happened. I was raiding pals and goofing around, so we're gonna skip. I did attempt to fight Lily and Lylene and got slam dunked. Spoilers, I guess. I fought her a few times, but I couldn't get a W. I'm starting to sweat a bit because we're over 50 days, and I only have 50 days to beat 5 more tower bosses. We're cutting it pretty close here. Today was the day. Day 64, I flew over to Sakurajima Island to see what it was all about. My first encounter was 2 Wixen Not, which are Wixen doing a Ketras cosplay. Pretty cool. I went in for a closer look and almost fat-fingered my own demise. A bit further down the beach, I ran into an armadillo pal called a Kick-It, and it almost folded me like a lawn chair. I spent a good 10 minutes fighting this thing, and I accidentally killed it. It did drop some oil though, which is one of the new resources in Palworld. I also fought a gory rat, Terra, and actually managed to catch it. My first ever Sakurajima catch was a gory rat. Inland, I found a Lulu too, and wanted to catch it. Little did I know that this pal had the ability to channel the literal raw energy of God, and call a holy beam of cleansing light to smite down her foe. After going back and forth with this thing, I managed to catch one of them, and I caught the other one too, I guess. I wasn't done exploring yet though. I really wanted to see what Sakurajima had to offer. Let's just say I wasn't disappointed. After flying around for a minute, I was greeted by sakura trees that were in bloom, and I found a small shrine that was next to the boss tower. I took a moment to really soak in the arena for a few minutes and ran around on foot. Probably not the smartest idea. There were patrols of ninja that were running around turning the local wildlife into sashimi. Eventually, I ran into this really cool dog pal named Yakumo, and he has one of the most busted abilities in the game. Basically, you can breed a Yakumo with passive traits that you want, and there's a chance that a wild pal, when captured, will mimic those passive traits, saving you hours of mind-numbing pal breeding. I would use this ability later to catch a certain kind of dragon. For now, I had my fill of exploring Sakurajima and headed back to my base to rethink life. Didn't get to think for too long though. I was back to making pals breed to create the perfect warrior. Then I was off to fight the Relaxosaurus Lux, and I actually caught him this time. When I went back to base, I did a quick pal party swap and noticed that I had a beacon, but I have no idea where it came from, so I guess I either hatched it from an egg or I caught it. I don't know. Look, I'm not combing through over 200 hours of footage. I'm just not doing it. With Beacon and my other pals, I flew around catching the rarer pals to fill my pal deck. The next day, I wanted to ride my Quiven around because he's cool. So I crafted him a saddle and began flying on him for a bit, celebrating this huge personal milestone. I eventually found myself in the mountains. I needed to get some quartz from rocks. Oh, I'm also riding on my Kitsune because it helps me resist the elements. I eventually arrived at the Crystal Promised Land and had to fight off some cryolinks. I caught one for good measure and helped myself to the precious resource. I would need quartz to craft stuff like circuit boards and other cool things a bit later. The next day, I took the fight to Lily and Lylene again. This time, I had a few more levels under my belt, and my boy Wixen to see us through. Wixen was useful in this fight, not only because he is a fire pal, but he also has an ability to make it so I do fire damage with my pistol. After a few minutes of fighting, we got a W. I was feeling confident that I could take on Marcus and Phalaris. I'll just say this right now. I wasn't ready. I gave up on that prospect for now and headed back to Mount Obsidian to catch the one, the only, Estegon. Mostly because it was a fantastic pal that could mine minerals super fast. I died. On day 74, I went to the wildlife preserve to catch something nice, like this shadow beak. However, I didn't see that Ibushi cut my Wixen in half, and brother started making a beeline for me. Spoiler alert, I didn't get away. I also made a pistol apparently, I don't remember making it, but here we are. At some point, I found myself at Mount Obsidian again and ran into the new palace called the Xenoguard. I thought it was a jet dragon that got away from its programming and escaped. I fought with it for a few minutes and I caught it though. I wanted to fight Marcus again, and this time, I brought a meteor launcher. This thing just hurls meteor fragments at high speeds to cause maximum devastation. But they lied, because it doesn't do much damage at all. And guess what else? Yeah, I died again. I wanted to get some levels into Xenoguard, so I took him out to fight world bosses for a bit. The highlight was this Alpha Yormantide. Just pretend quivering in the Xenoguard, I guess. My grind continued for most of the week. Marcus was a brick wall that I intended to knock down. My path led me to catching this menacing I would hardly ever use. But hey, at least I got it right. You know what's crazy to me is that I have gone 70 plus days without unlocking the fast travel to Dune Shelter, the hub in the desert where you can buy various things and new pals. Well, it's time to rectify that. I couldn't really escape the desert though, and challenged the Anubis world boss to a fight. He was 6 levels higher than me and it showed. Every time he would hit one of my pals, it seemed like time froze for a second. I eventually pulled out the big gun, took aim, and missed my shot, blowing up innocent pals that were just in the background. Oh well, can't dwell on the mistakes of the past, we got a fight to get through. Yes, I'm back at Mount Obsidian today. I just can't seem to escape this place. I was here to catch the Alpha Blazemut for his Fire Lord perk. I wanted to breed a super strong Wixen, something I wanted to do in my last Palworld 100 Days video, and you already know the breeding process goes. I'm not going to bother showing it to you. At my other base, I could finally build a production assembly line, and I almost died falling off the platform. I should install some safety features, but I never will. OSHA hates me. After that, I went back to, you guessed it, on Obsidian. It was time to go round 2 with the Astegon boss. I had a lot of coal farming coming up, and this guy completely fit the bill. The fight was going very well, until Astegon clipped through the wall. I tried to fly around the room to get him to come back out, ran around for a few minutes, he didn't want to budge. Yes, I did say a swear. All I could really do was just leave to reset him and then come back, but this time I accidentally killed him. After making some preparations, I'm back, hopefully for the last time. I returned to the volcano to get my stuff back. I just wanted to show you how ridiculous this Alpha Kitsune is. This thing is absolutely massive, a real heckin' big boy. I made my way down into the mines where Astegon was chilling out and ran into a bit of an issue. Astegon was keen on not letting me grab my things, but he did let me grab an early death. I made some throwaway armor at base and tried to grab my things again. This time I was successful. Did you know that Astegon can wall hack? Because I sure didn't. Honestly, I don't want to bore you with the details, but I did die a lot. The final time I locked in, and I actually managed to catch him this time. Or was it her? I don't know. I'm just glad I never have to do this again. I also managed to catch another Blazemut too. I just thought you should know. A day or so later, I tried to capture my first set of legendary pals, this being Palladius and Necromus. I could waffle on about the fight itself, but you can probably guess what happened to me. Oh man, Mount Obsidian? It sure has been a while, huh? Well, since capturing Palladius and Necromus didn't go so well, I thought I'd try and catch Jet Dragon instead. The fight was a long, drawn-out process, and we were making some good headway until it got too close to the ledge and this happened. Yeah, I didn't hear no bell, so I got back in the saddle and tried again. I had spent the better half of the entire week in game trying to capture this Jet Dragon with 0 success. By this time, I was feeling kinda done with Palworld. I visited the new Sakurajima Island, caught a bunch of pals, and then some new ones. I guess I crafted some pal armor in there too at some point. Also, check out this Lord of the Rings collectible I crafted. Not a lot whole happened in the twilight of this playthrough, sadly. For the last 2 days, I didn't do a whole lot of anything, just hung out at base and did things. But I did play an extra 100 days, so here's me fighting the Sakurajima tower boss with a crazy shadow beak. Wow, I won. All right, that's all I got. So, see ya.